is this intervention going to make the client's world bigger? I love that sentiment from my guest today, Cindy Mrotek. She is a board-certified assistant behavior analyst and learning behavior specialist with over 20 years of experience supporting autistic individuals and those with developmental disabilities. She's the founder and CEO of a.c.e. Therapies, and she is providing an amazing skill set to those in her Illinois location. She is providing a center where they have speech, ABA, OT, but then she also has an adult learning center, which I love. I worked at the middle school, high school level for 10 years, and I really love talking about supporting older learners because I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. You will learn in this episode how we can provide ABA for underserved populations, how we can provide ABA so that we are in an interdisciplinary practice. Cindy is doing such amazing work, and we talk about why is this important? Why is this particular skill important? Why is this particular goal important? Because we want whatever intervention we're providing to make the client's world bigger. And I love that sentiment. We are trying to do that with our podcast. Make sure that you leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts so people think that we are talking about important things here. Also think about joining the ABA Speech Connection, where we offer CEUs for speech therapists, BCBAs, and RBTs so we can work together. Let's get into this episode with Cindy. I'm Rose Griffin, a speech therapist, board-certified behavior analyst, and founder of ABA Speech. It wasn't all that long ago that I felt overwhelmed by providing therapy for my autistic students and any students who were not yet speaking. Fast forward through many doubts, tears, research, and courses, and you will see the framework that I use today and share with over 60,000 readers weekly. One that will help you support your students and feel more confident in the process. I created the ABA Speech podcast to give you simple, step-by-step strategies to help you reach all of your students wherever they are on their communication journeys. If you're a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT student, or parent who's looking to help all students develop a way to communicate with the world, you are in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Welcome to the show. We have a great show for you today with Cindy Mrotek. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Cindy.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to connect today and get into our conversation. But before we do that, I love to hear everybody's how you got into the field story. So can you tell us how you got into this field and kind of what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. I'll give the Cliff Notes version. I started off as a special education teacher in 2001. I was actually a communication disorders dropout at the time in college. I'm like, gosh, this is really hard. I don't want to go through all of this school. I'll be a special ed teacher instead. And so speech has always actually been my first love. So after college, I opened up one of the first classrooms for kids with autism in a cooperative in the southwest side of Chicago. And if I could redo my first year of teaching again, I would do it all over again. I learned a lot, and I mainly worked with kids who were non-vocal and more highly impacted with autism. And after about 4 or 5 years of that job, I went on and actually changed paths just slightly. And I worked for Rush Hospital. They have a school there for children with psychiatric disorders. So then I worked more in mental and emotional health for a few years. And that also had a different burnout rate associated with it. Then I actually got hired to pull kids back from their co-op to their home school for kids with more significant needs in autism. So I opened up a classroom where we were transitioning children out of outplacement and bringing them back to the public school setting. And that was a great challenge, actually. And I learned a lot. It was great. I had to work collaboratively with so many other disciplines to set up a successful environment. So it was a great experience. Then somewhere down through all of this, I became a expert witness for an educational attorney, and I would testify at due process cases and give recommendations based on educational settings based off of my experience. I ended up getting my BCABA through all of this and through having kids and, reinventing myself a different life. And then after my own children went into school full time, I became a behavior specialist for a school district. And when I was there, I would go to IEP meetings with other behavior analysts and other like private practices. And I would be thinking to myself, I don't even think we're seeing the same kid. We're not looking at the same learner because this is a 9-year-old who's non-vocal, and we're focusing on filling in a graph to have skills that look like this instead of focusing on, the learner being able to say, I'm hungry, or I need to go to the bathroom, or completing living skills. So I decided to open up a.c.e. therapies that would focus on skills that matter and last a lifetime instead of what a graph should look like. And an assessment tool. So what really inspired me more, though, outside of that, was my sister-in-law had Down syndrome, and she lived with us part-time, my husband and myself. So as a caregiver, I knew what was missing in my sister-in-law's life because she wasn't taught at an early age. So I wanted to always make sure that whatever private practice I opened had options for adults as well, because you don't stop learning when school stops at age 22. And the skills you need to learn change. So that's kind of the birth of a.c.e. therapies.
Wow. I love that you had that real world experience, because there's a great article that's escaping my brain right now from the ABA world about picking functional targets. Like, we don't need to know. It has something to do with like the planets, like Mars. I can't think of it. Somebody will write in once I air this, but it's about what is functional. And I worked for 10 years in a middle school, high school, and as a speech therapist in a public school, great public school district I was in. And I really started to hone in on like what is super functional for students and what do they need to know. Now, what's hard about being a public school employee and trying to push and advocate for functional skills is that sometimes parents don't always agree. And so then when you're a public school employee, that gets extremely tricky. That's what's nicer about the clinical side, which I've also worked in private practice, is, people are coming to you because they want your expertise and they value your opinion. And if not, they'll just go somewhere else, right? So that's how private works. But yeah, that's great that you had that real life experience. And I think that's what's so cool about a.c.e. therapies. Before I pressed record, you were kind of telling me about the different locations, but can you tell us about the different locations briefly, but can you also tell us about the Life Skills Center? Because I know that that is just something that's really lacking in the world, and that other people would just be so interested in what you're offering there, because I feel like it's not something that happens many places.
Yeah, so we have 3 locations. We have a location 35 minutes west of Chicago in a town called Naperville. And actually, I acquired this location.
Oh, okay.
This originally was the speech and OT only center. And the original owner, before it was a.c.e. therapies, was retiring, and she wanted to sell to somebody in the ABA field. She wanted to sell to a clinician that practiced ABA. And she's never found anyone she really liked to sell her practice to, because she knew what she valued, and she knows that sometimes we don't always play in the same sandbox. So I had to work extremely hard. I tell everybody I worked harder at that relationship than I did trying to win my husband over. So she sold her practice to me, and that's how I actually started with speech and OT here, because I knew that's what was missing from my practice as well. And parents want a place that can go and get all services. So that's how my Naperville location kind of came about. And then we have a location on the south side of Chicago. That's where I grew up, in a little town called Marinette Park. And that's a really underserved population. And it's so densely populated without a lot of services. And I wanted to open up a practice in the community that raised me. And that's also where I was a Special Olympics coach in college. I was a Special Olympics coach for Mount Greenwood Park. And that's how I met my husband. His sister-in-law was or his sister was my athlete, and she
Oh, that's
introduced us.
cute. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so, oh my gosh,
So
you've done so many things. I
yeah,
mean,
I've done so
it's
many things.
amazing. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
So, so the combination of my Special Olympics experience and
Yeah.
speech and OT in Naperville led me to open up my adult learning center in Downers Grove, because when our learners grow up, and because you're an adult a lot longer than you are a child, and parents sometimes fail to realize that, right? They want all of these services right away when they're younger, and that's great. Early intervention is key, but we need just as much, if not more, services when they're adults and they're out of school, and skills need to change and programs need to change. And a lot of those programs are focused heavily on recreation. And if we don't have recreation skills that we can do independently and safely, then sometimes our learners can get into trouble. So my combination of Special Olympics and ABA and speech and OT led me to the Adult Learning Center, because a 15-year-old most likely doesn't want to come into a center where we see a lot of Mickey Mouse and Sesame Street and little kid activities. They need to learn skills in a context that will make a difference. So it was important to me to give parents options and choices.
I love that. And I'm so glad that we're meeting because I had this whole thing about modified leisure skills. So when I was working with middle school, high school students, I was like, oh my gosh, these kids, and I was working in ABA clinics, non-behavioral programs. One of my best friends, those are really amazing. I say mom and pop, it's a huge clinic, but it's not backed by private equity here, which is private equity is fine. But, it's just she's running it herself and with two partners. And I was working with kids who were just very impaired, with autism. And I knew that they were not going to be able to like maybe play Connect Four or play Scrabble the same way that we would. So I made all these like modified leisure activity videos that I put as video models on my YouTube channel, which are so great. And I've used with so many kids and shared, and they have thousands of views. But I also would, in the summer, like I loved summer therapy because it just felt like it was easier or something. It was like more
Yeah.
casual.
Yeah.
I would like make obstacle courses because I love fitness and I love being active and things like that. So I try to put that into my therapy as well. And so I'd put together like a little field day activities for the kids, all stuff that they could do,
Yeah.
but like we'd put it outside. And I love that because I think when you have that mindset of like, I always thought to myself, and when I train about working with older students, it's like, okay, makes sense from a vocational standpoint and what makes sense for a leisure standpoint? And kind of like you're saying with recreation, like, what do I do as an adult? I work and I do something I love. And then when I'm not at work, I spend time with loved ones and I do things that I enjoy that are leisure activities. And that is always what I try to tell people, like, because people I think can get so consumed about like, well, what do I work on in therapy? Like what's important? And it's like, well, what makes your life important? And those things like where people are going to be like deriving joy from these recreation opportunities. So that's really cool that you focus on that as well, because that's really what
Yeah.
makes our lives special, right? Are the things that we like to do.
We like to do. And in Illinois, at least, at the surrounding areas here where I practice, most of the day programs for our young adults are heavily recreation based, and there aren't one-on-ones in adulthood in adult programs. The funding's really not there. So they need to be able to work in larger groups and tolerate or participate in recreation based activities, whether it's in a center or in the community. And if we're missing those skills, if we don't know how to perform those skills or participate safely in those skills, our options are limited in what's available in adult services. So our adult programming, number one, it's skill-based treatment. So we're always looking at those skills that we need to teach more of, but also we're teaching them the skills they're going to need in order to participate in a larger community day program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that because that is something too I've heard people, and just being in the autism space, I don't have an autistic child of my own, but I have a lot of friends who have autistic children. And they have said, if your children don't have those types of recreational skills, then it's like the child's world gets really small as an adult. And then also the family's world can get really small. And it's just the amount of places you can go, the amount of things you can do. And I always say too, it depends on your area because I live in a suburb of Cleveland. And I feel like depending on where you live, there are places that have fitness classes for adults with disabilities, and there's sensory friendly movies, and there's rec centers that have all these amazing programs, and not everybody has access to that. So it's great that you're making a difference in the lives of people. Because if you don't have that, your world can get really small, right? And you're just not doing a lot in the community.
Yeah, my supervisor, one of the first things that, and she still tells me to this day, is, the goal of ABA and when working with, interdisciplinary services is to make the child or adult's world bigger, not smaller, right? So that's something I always remember, and that's something we really focus on here is the skill I'm teaching going to make their world bigger? Is it going to matter 5 years from now? Is it going to matter 6 months from now? Because if it isn't, why are we teaching it?
Yes, I love that. We need to put that in every IEP conference room. The start of
Right?
the school
Is
year.
it going
Yeah.
to make your world bigger? Not
Yeah, I like that. That's good. So you're offering the different therapies. It sounds like you're offering speech therapy, ABA, occupational therapy. What do you think are some benefits of operating a clinic that offers all those different therapies?
um, well, I like that we challenge each other, and I like that we're always thinking about the other disciplines and how we can collaborate. And we're this way we're building a more comprehensive program for for our learner and the families we're servicing. So we're not just building like I try to compare, or when I'm talking to families, I try to tell them, this is like your private IEP. It's
Yeah.
you're getting a little bit from each discipline, but we don't have to worry about, the Illinois State Board of Education standards necessarily. This is what's medically necessary for us
Mhm.
to make progress towards the goals that we feel will, and you feel will make your world bigger. So I definitely think one of the benefits is just that perspective taking from each discipline and how we can work together to build a life, not just this small part of a person's day.
Oh, I love that. To build a life. Yeah, that's so important. And I think that's what's hard is that we all think that we know the best way to do that. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we can get into these disagreements, which I think you said you follow me on LinkedIn and maybe Instagram. So you kind
Yep.
of, I know that you have been on a social media platform. So you understand that there's some disagreements
Yes.
among the different providers. But I guess, how do you handle that? I guess, what's it like in your neck of the woods? Like, are people open to ABA? Are there a lot of ABA providers? How do you personally in your clinic handle any difficulty around collaboration? I'm sure that when you're onboarding new staff and people, you have a job available, like people know that you offer different services. So it's not going to come as a surprise. But how do you handle those, and kind of what is the climate of ABA in your area?
So I have a very competitive ABA
Okay.
world surrounding me.
Yeah.
I would say most of the centers around me are, and nothing wrong with it, but are private equity backed.
Okay.
And I'm the funder of my center. So it's a little bit different because I'm playing in a different playing field in terms of the competitive level of
Yes.
it, and what I can pay people, what my hours are, what caseloads look like,
Mhm.
so when people come to me and want to work for me, I think that they do like that there's more of a collaboration
Mhm.
piece, and their voice will be heard, and it's not just about meeting a billable requirement necessarily, or something that's different here is I believe in 45 minutes of speech per session, where a lot of my competitors around here say it's 30 minutes because you can see two clients in an hour, where
Mm.
I believe our clients with autism deserve 60 minutes of speech, but I can
Right.
only charge the 45 minutes. So that's something that's a little bit different in just geographically when I'm
Mhm.
servicing families, is that I believe that most children with autism do require 45 minutes of speech and 60 minutes of OT. And that's quality care. Um, and if there is, when I'm screening candidates, they know that I believe in the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach, and that I
Mhm.
respect everybody's different opinions. And we need to be a respectful challenge group to each other. Because I don't have to be right. They don't have to be right. I need it to be right for the client we're servicing. So I don't care who's right. We just need to make it right. So,
Mhm.
leave your ego at the door.
Right.
It's what's going to make it right for the family, what's going to make it right for the learner, because it just needs to be right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. I'm
And
taking notes.
and it's we need a challenge group in this field.
Mm-hmm.
Respectful challenge group, because I want to know more about why it's important that I'm making this up, but why it's important they need to know these 30 vocab words, or,
Right.
whatever the
Right.
speech path is
Mm-hmm.
really passionate about. I want to know more about that so
Mm-hmm.
I can implement it more in my ABA programming, because maybe I'm not seeing something correctly. Or when
Mm-hmm.
an OT says, no, that's behavioral, it's not sensory like you think it is. Tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Make me think differently about this so we can all work together. And actually, the best feedback I get are from my RBTs and BTs, that they love working with the other disciplines because they love implementing it into their therapy daily. So I think one of the benefits of an interdisciplinary approach is RBTs are constantly embedding what they're observing the speech and OT doing within the ABA sessions. So it's not just that 45-minute speech session or that 60-minute speech session. It's all day, every day.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And that is definitely something when I work clinically in schools and private programs, I would always say my most important job as a speech therapist is not the therapy. My most important job is actually building a rapport with the parapro or the registered behavioral
Yeah.
technician, RBT, because they are the ambassadors of generalization and making sure that
Yes.
these things are worked on in a way that's meaningful for the learner across the learner's day. Because I'm just one person, I only have so much time to give because there's so many people to serve in my capacity. So I used to always say that is that the most important thing I do is not the therapy. The most important thing I do is build rapport with other adults who are going to be with my learner more often so that they feel motivated and excited about the change that they're seeing in communication. So I'm glad that you said that. The other thing that's interesting about your area, because so I've had ABA speech, I've been running my company 8 years. And when I became a small business owner with this education company, I thought everybody operated the way that my friend's clinic did, with multiple therapies being offered. And that just really isn't the case. There's a lot of ABA clinics who, for whatever, it's not their business model, it doesn't make sense for them from a financial standpoint, yada, yada, is that they don't offer speech. A lot of ABA providers don't offer speech. I've done consultations with other ABA providers as a speech therapist in BCBA. Being dually certified is nice to kind of help people with that, but it doesn't always make sense for every ABA clinic to offer speech. So you probably have places that are offering speech and maybe some that aren't, right?
Yeah.
Your area.
So, yeah, I would say it's a combination.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the biggest, any speech path that comes to work for me that leaves another company that um, does offer both services,
Mm-hmm.
they're always so thankful that I'm like, no, I offer 45-minute sessions, not 30.
Right.
That's really more of what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
When they're leaving another ABA company, they want to know how many learners or patients they would have to see in an hour,
Yeah.
because they really value that time. And
Mm-hmm.
they also value working with BCBAs a lot because, what it's just, I love hearing BCBAs and speech paths talk about the communication and language and how they challenge each other to think about what they need to communicate in that situation. And it's
Mm-hmm.
such a great collaboration. We try to have like interdisciplinary meetings here once a month where, we're going over a case and all of the minds are kind of together at the table, saying, scratching our heads a bit, like, what are we going to do differently? And the way they question and challenge each other, it's so refreshing because you walk out thinking, yeah, we have a good plan here. We're
Yeah.
make something happen and everybody was heard and respected and we see each other's point of view and we're getting it right this time, or we're going to try to get it right different this
Yeah.
time. But the RBTs is, like you said, if we can teach them or the parapros the most of how to implement that therapy,
Right.
I did my job if they're doing things when I'm not in the room, right?
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
it's not what they're doing when I'm there, it's what they're doing when
Right.
I'm not there. And
Yes.
I I was covering a lunch break. and one of the RBTs actually corrected me about what I was supposed to be doing, like gave me the speech path, like, no, this is what you should be doing. This is what Jamie said. And that made me feel great. Like, I love that
Yes.
they were giving me feedback on how to be a better therapist
Right.
to the learner I was covering.
Oh, I love that. The ongoing communication piece. And we talk about
Yes.
that a lot. I just did a course that is in our ABA Speech Connection now as a recording called From Silos to Synergy. And it was all about communication among speech therapists, BCBAs, and RBTs. But that's one of the things I talk about is just having ongoing communication. So I can tell that you have that set up at your clinic. And that's really nice because I think feeling valued too is really important at work. And the work that we do is hard and not every day is very easy, can be really challenging,
Yeah.
emotionally and physically and all the things. And so just having that support system, I think is kind of a running theme of people that I have on the
Yep.
show that seem to be getting it right and trying to do their best. So
And
I love that.
we co-treat ABA and speech co-treat a lot together here. So our RBT will co-treat with our speech path to manage more of the, behavioral side
Mm-hmm.
um, of what's going on. And then our speech path will join our BCBA in caregiver guidance once a month. So we can go over all of the programming together.
Oh yeah, that's nice. I love that. And that's a great part of ABA is that parent training piece because
Yeah.
we don't as speech therapists, I would have like a dialogue with the parent in the waiting room or I try to be really like sending emails and having that ongoing communication, but that parent training piece is really
Yeah.
nice because it's just like embedded into like what we have to provide. So I think that is very nice. I love that.
Yes.
So what would you tell a clinic owner who is thinking about offering multiple therapies at their clinic? Oftentimes people are thinking like, oh, I would love to start. I'm a speech therapist and I offer SLP and OT, but we'd love to add ABA in because it seems like it's just such a need and people really need it. Or there are some, bigger companies, but there's wait lists. And like, what would you tell somebody who's kind of thinking about dipping a toe into doing all these things?
Um, First, I would say it's hard to find the right people, right? That's number one. Find the right people. You can get some people on the bus, but you have to make sure the bus is all going in the right direction, right? So find the right people to get on your bus that support your mission. Again, we have respectful challenge groups, right? And I think that's what makes a great center. So you don't always have to think alike. You shouldn't all think alike.
Mhm.
Um, I know it can be scary bringing in other disciplines, but it's the challenge that makes you grow and makes your clients grow and your staff grow. So find the right people to make sure and the right people are facing the right direction on the bus. I will also say it makes families love having all disciplines in one place. Um, it's hard for parents to transport their kids across cities basically or
Mhm.
suburbs to get speech, OT, and ABA if it's not offered all in one place. So, we had one learner who came to us, going to ABA one place, then driving 45 minutes for speech for one 45-minute session once a week.
Mhm.
And that's a lot on a family when they may have other kids and jobs. So it's best care, at least in our area.
Mhm.
Um, where when you can get all services in one place. And families love knowing, similar to a school setting, families love knowing that they're constantly getting speech, OT, ABA throughout their day, all day long, even if
Mhm.
it's not the speech path that's working with them every minute of the day. They know
Right.
that RBT or BCBA is putting it in the program daily. And
Mhm.
if something were to, if a behavior were to spike or if something were to, pop up as we say, oh gosh, the behavior popped up. The speech path can, be there in 1 minute to kind of help problem solve, or the OT to kind of help problem solve what's going on, even if they're with somebody else. So I think a lot of parents like that it's fluid. So
Mhm.
if they have the flu one day, they know that ABA and speech can be made up on a Friday because, our operations team can get creative with scheduling as well, right? They're not
Right.
missing speech and OT.
Mhm.
So it's just a more supportive model for families, I think.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way of putting it, supportive model. So where can people find out more about you and your work?
We have our website, ace-therapies.com. We are on Instagram, ACE Therapies, an underscore after the S, right, Rose? I think I told
That's
you an
correct. That is
underscore
correct.
after the S. And then on Facebook, we're ACE Therapies. So that's where they can find out more. And I'm on LinkedIn, Cindy Mrotek.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the
Yes.
show, Cindy. It was
Thank
great to
you,
connect.
Rose. Thank you. I appreciate it.